Hey there, welcome to White Women Wake Up. I'm Jonelle.
And I'm Karen.
Each week, one of us brings a topic to the table, something we've been wrestling with, reading about, or noticing in our own lives.
And the other reacts in real time. No scripts, no prep, just an honest conversation between a mother and a daughter, spanning generations about what it means to wake up as white women in a world shaped by bias, power, and inherited patterns.
We don't always agree, and it's not always comfortable, but we show up anyways. Let's wake up.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Did you reflect?
You were about to say homework. You were totally...
Oh, wait. Before we get into homework,
okay.
Before we get into any of that, we need to make sure we plug our book club, our band book club.
Yes,
remember, for all of those of you that did our bingo card together, the band book club was one of them.
Yeah.
And so we will be having that this coming Tuesday, which is exciting.
So exciting.
So it's a book that both Jonelle and I've really loved, The Hate You Give. It's probably not too late for you to read it.
It's definitely not too late for you to read it.
Or even just read parts of it so that you can at least engage.
Watch the movie?
Yeah. Although you did say, I do remember starting to watch the movie, but I didn't continue with it. You did say that there were some differences.
There were definitely
And we can talk about that. Yeah.
But I think the sentiment is still there.
Yeah. Maybe I'll try to watch the movie this weekend.
Well, it's still, you can still watch it today. I have it rented, I think, for 48 hours until...
Who knows?
I don't know, until like 7 p.m. today.
Well, we'll see. Anyways, just a big shout out to the book club.
I love it. Please join.
Thank you. And so, reflection. Okay, I've been thinking... Wait,
microfeminism.
You start.
Ooh, where did I think... Really, what I learned last week as I did some research on microfeminisms, because I had done it, I had learned about this for a while, is I love when we research these topics, because I think so often they come across our lives, we have a perspective on them, and then the research is what adds the full context. And so before I did research, I was all on board with microfeminisms. I was like, I love this. I love where this is going. And then the research did, it set me back to the realization of, I see where there is good in this, but I see where there is harm in this, and I see how we can do better. Yeah. And that's what I love all the time when I get to do these research things is okay, how can I still take something that I have good intent around, but adjust the negative impact it may have had in the future. And so for anyone who didn't listen last time, microfeminisms, a great way to start your women empowerment journey and just and do small things every day that neutralizes gender and essentially uplifts women. But at the same time, really making sure you're looking at an intersectionality approach to it, taking along your BIPOC, your other marginalized women with you. And then also not just stopping at the micro, but moving forward and doing looking at the big picture of everything and how can we still take larger actions that support women, essentially. I don't want to say feminism because, again, we know there's a lot of white feminism out there. There's a lot of, but support women. Yeah.
Well, what I did was I immediately went home and looked up what the term of feminism is, because I keep thinking I should have probably looked up patriarchy too, and I didn't have that
after that conversation.
But after our conversation, the word that was used in to describe feminism is the word advocacy, and I thought, it's so interesting because feminism is not a negative thing. It's, it's like everything in life. If something's taken and carried in one direction, it can be negative and so forth. So, but the advocacy for all women is really important for, how do women, all women who are, working in a daycare, women who are working cleaning homes, women who are working, day-to-day labor jobs, they need advocacy.
Everyone.
So that they have value. And so, or women, when we look at, like you said, intersectionality, reality. And so
I think that's
I
the big
love,
key with feminism.
I love what you said about like, the idea of microfeminism, like when we really started identifying that, we're reading books all by men, or we're watching movies that are all by male directors, or even Hamnet. When I watched Hamnet, one of the things that I thought was so good, and I just had to catch myself, there was this scene where Shakespeare's wife is saying, you weren't there. You weren't there. And at first I kept thinking, this is so mean. Why are they calling that out? And yet I know that if it were me and I were in her position, I would be thinking that.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, has that not been called out in movies before? That deep psychological accusation of a relationship?
Yes.
And so it is that kind of like really looking at how when a woman director tells a story, or like, I just got done reading Judge Stone by Viola Davis and James Patterson. And I've loved that book because it had the perspective of a Black woman. It was a co-authored book. It wasn't James Patterson just trying to pretend he was a Black author.
Trying to pretend he had the understanding of a Black woman in the South.
Yeah.
And no, this is what I wanted to touch on, why I brought up All Her Faults last week. Of the show does such a great job of just slightly outlining the differences of expectations of moms versus dad in the household. And it doesn't necessarily shame anyone, but the difference of having a female director is they know
the
nuances of that, and they know what that means. And so that's the interesting part of some of these microfeminisms that were talked about, is because it's micro, but it builds larger recognition without the giant call out.
Yeah.
But as we know, we also sometimes need the giant call out.
Yeah.
So it's balance.
Yeah, it's balance. Yeah.
We're doing what we
Oh my
can,
gosh,
everyone.
thank you. Okay.
Yeah. Now on to you.
I hate being the subject person because I never feel like I can deliver it well. But anyways.
I feel the same way every time it's not my... I have like such a relax in my shoulder when it's like not my subject time. I'm like, great. I get to just react to things and talk from who knows where.
I have to say that... I hope our listeners are like what we're doing, because coming up with content every week is interesting. But I heard a quote, and I do like our intro because it says, it can be inspired by our reading or whatever. But I heard a quote that just gut punched me.
Ooh.
And I've been just thinking about you a lot lately, and Jonelle's dealing with a lot of health issues. And so this statement was the crushing weight of indifference.
Ooh.
And so then I had to look it up, and it turns out that Eli Wiesel, who is the Holocaust survivor, Nobel Peace Prize winner, actually in 1999 in a statement to the White House, or in a discussion at the White House, he said the quote, "Indifference reduces the other to an abstraction." And so just this language of indifference. And so that's my topic today, because it's complicated.
There's power in indifference.
There's power. So talk to me a little bit when you hear this language of indifference. What does it mean to you? And then I'm going to talk a little bit deeper on the social science of it and so forth.
There's a lot of layers I can take there. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is I was told at I don't want to say young age, but probably in my early 20s, about in order to win like an argument or a heated discussion, in the workplace, anywhere, when it comes to men are taught to be indifferent and neutral tones. The indifference and the neutrality wins the power. And that is something that has bothered me so much, because you can see it.
That would be a patriarchal value.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyways, but you can see it in how a lot of people, and it's not just men who do this. There's a lot of women I've seen this do this too, is that they feel that they can win the argument by not being emotional. And unfortunately, I am someone who cries at the tip of the hat. I mean, I cry at a commercial. I cry thinking about the future of my dog. I cry at just any silly things. And none of it's bad. Some of it's happy tears, some of it's not. But I wear my heart on my sleeve. And so it's always been a sense of frustration to me, because it's the one with the emotion, the one with the passion loses the argument. And I'm not saying like there's negative passion, clearly. Like there's manipulative tears, there's, hatred and meanness and that. I'm not going to that level, but I'm talking about there's still this like indifference of power that has always frustrated me that honestly shuts people down.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that I hear of
This is so,
shutting people down.
And it does. Indifference does shut people down. But it's so interesting where you've taken it. Of course, when I heard The Crushing Weight of Indifference, I've been thinking about how you've been treated in the medical field. And there's an overwhelming response of indifference. Like, oh, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. But there's been a few people have had some empathy and emergency around it, but most have been pretty indifferent.
But even when I've learned, I've walked out of the room, then the indifference sets in.
It sets in.
There's compassion in the room and indifference in action outside of the room.
Yeah. So one of the stories, when I heard that quote, one of the stories I was thinking about, and I think wait, real quick. I think where we can emote with a difference is when we're dealing with a subject, and I'm going to talk about the language of proximity in a bit, but when we're dealing with a subject that is so raw in us, right? And so yours right now is this health. I'll never forget when I was just starting my teaching career, and I really needed a full-time job. And I was in a meeting with the dean, and I was just adjuncting at the time. And I mean, it's kind of amazing that I got to be in the meeting, but I was just part of this small group meeting. And my dean used this language of like they were looking at a new position, but they didn't really have, the budget wasn't completely there for the new position. Instead of talking about it in humane language, he kept referring it to as a line item. And I felt so diminished when I walked out of there going, all I am is a line item. Yeah. All I am is a line item. I'm nothing more, nothing less. I felt like there was this neutrality, this indifference to the fact that I wanted this job. Anyways, it was soul crushing. So the crushing weight of indifference, right? And so...
Can I add on to that?
Yeah.
Because what you added with indifference too is also... indifference is created when it doesn't affect them.
Yes.
When it doesn't. And so the thing that you brought up, I was a very interesting situation when I was chief of staff for a company I won't name, but a large retail company. This was in 2020. During the pandemic, we had all these like virtual meetings that were happening, trying to calm, neutralize what was happening. And our president got on and very casually said, of course there's going to be layoffs. Like that's just like kind of the business and this. And from the back end, there was a big emergency of everyone like shutting it down, like stop talking kind of thing, like switching the subject. And it was so fascinating. And from his perspective, I understand where he's coming from. It's business. It's a line item. Like clearly people should know we're in a pandemic, business is down, there's going to be reshifts, there's going to be layoffs. But that is so easily said with indifference when the impact wasn't hitting him personally.
Yeah. And he wasn't going to lay off his position.
Exactly. And so the difference of seeing how his message would land to the individuals, of course, at a business level, you can talk about that, but that is not the audience to speak with such difference to. Kind of thing. And he almost later really dwelled on that for years, on how actually disappointed he was by his employees for not having that
And
understanding.
isn't that the essence of our conversation? Like,
Yeah.
we're trying to change ourselves
Yeah.
so we don't, like, truthfully, we all walk into this space of
Yeah.
indifference.
Yep.
So one of the things that, like reading about this, indifference rarely announces itself as cruelty.
Yeah.
It feels like neutrality, like efficiency, like just getting through the day. But for the person on the receiving end, someone feeling vulnerable with their health, someone on the margins, someone experiencing unemployment,
Yeah.
they can feel like the system is not built for them.
Yeah.
Or the person with a disability, that like their needs are never considered. So this indifference actually acts as erasure. It doesn't act, it's not neutral.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's anything but neutral.
It's anything but neutral. So anyways, I wanted to talk a little bit about the science of neutrality. There's
Okay.
3 theories that if we understand them, we can possibly move, because the truth is, we all have been like my dean before. We probably have all been like your boss before, where when we're not in the situation, we don't realize how we might be lending ourselves to that kind of indifference, right? But the goal of our conversations is to begin to be aware, right? So that we can at least empathize.
But I was about to say, I don't know if everyone's been in that situation, because having natural empathy kind of never lets you be put in that situation.
Yeah.
Because you empathize for others.
But I do think we get into, like, the language of efficiency is so interesting, because my boss used the word line item. Your boss used the word layoffs. Those are common words all the time.
No, I wasn't. Those, yes, are, anyways, we can continue on. I was just saying, you said everyone probably has experienced it.
No, everyone has, I think. Well, like you say, for example, I hear you talk a lot about, many couples are indifferent to what someone who is single feels.
Yeah.
I don't think they mean it.
No,
they're not trying to be cruel.
I guess my point is,
and yet they're indifferent.
But I guess my point is, just having a baseline of empathy, you wouldn't have that issue.
Yes.
That's what
we're trying for, right? That is what we're trying for. So there's 3 theories that kind of speak to this. One they call the Construal level theory. It was by Trope and Lieberman. The further something is from our direct experience, the more abstract it becomes in our minds. And abstraction is the breeding ground of indifference. So when we have never been proximate, or we have never been near poverty or discrimination, those realities remain simply concepts, but not truths. So first, think about this, like, I have not emigrated. I've not migrated. I've lived in a suburb. I've always been housed. These are things that, they're kind of like, if I let them stay abstract to me, I can become very indifferent to them. So ways that I try not to be abstract is by like you're working in a soup kitchen, or going into urban spaces, going into spaces with diversity, reading books to gain empathy. But okay, so that was one. So when it's abstract and we don't try to bring it into our spaces, that becomes a place of indifference. The empathy gap. George Lowenstein from Carnegie Mellon, we consistently underestimate the emotional and physical states of others when we are not in that state. So, like, for example, you've been working, your health has been, you've been having a struggle with your health. Janelle's got some back issues, and it's been very big. And I'll go back and forth. My mobility's fine. I'm doing fine. And I forget that you might be in a tough state that day.
Yeah. Well, because I
So-
don't complain about it.
Yeah.
You
So
don't understand that I'm in constant.
yeah, so I might underestimate that emotional or physical state that you're in. So, for example, when we're employed,
Yeah.
We might understand someone else's financial fragility, right? And we're not trying to be cruel. We just don't get it.
Yeah.
We don't get it because, like, when I've have felt vulnerable financially, people will be like, "Oh, let's go here, let's go do this, let's go do that," forgetting that all these let's goes cost money.
Oh,
And so then you're just like, no, you kind of make up. I'm not in the mood,
Yeah.
maybe not today. Instead of letting it be abstract, making it a little bit more personal or empathetic. Can I put myself in that person's shoes?
Yeah.
Maybe we go for a walk instead of a movie type of thing. And then the last one is social. This one I thought was so interesting, the social baseline theory. And it was done by Lane, Luminet, Nave, and Arahak in 2015. People with a greater access to resources develop a stronger sense of self-sufficiency and become less practiced at recognizing needs in others.
Ooh.
The more cushion you have, the less you have needed to rely on others, and the less your brain has been trained to notice when others have no cushion at all.
Oh.
So privilege does not just give us advantages, it teaches us to really stop seeing. So I remember when we were having a challenge with our monies and we got rid of all of our credit cards. And talk about low empathy. People in our society use credit cards as, like, if you've got a flat tire, you just fix it with your credit card.
Yeah.
If your dog's sick, you take it and you fix it with your credit card. So if you're living in a space without a credit card, you're really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that baseline theory about, like, with privilege and self-sufficiency really does get in the way of our understanding, and it makes us indifferent.
Well, and isn't there something too about that being said about what we talk about, like the discomfort cycle with white women?
Yeah.
And how that sounds like then discomfort is even like farther away than we realize for a lot of people who are in situations where they're comfortable and they don't have to, they can easily fix with outside of discomfort. And it is interesting you say that, like, through my medical stuff, through this journey of seeing, now I think I'm at 6 doctors at this point, 6 specialists, within different communities, how uncomfortable people are in my lives because they just want to fix it.
They just want to fix it.
And so they throw out all of these ideas or things that they, just assume I haven't done yet to fix it. And I get that, but it's because it's really hard for people, especially people who are well-resourced, to live in discomfort.
Yeah. And they go to indifference. I mean, I know myself. The world often is so overwhelming. Like, we have climate, change. We have, we're in war right now. There's economic instability. We have immigration. We have migration. We have climate migration. We have so many things going on that at a certain level, in order to survive, we can become indifferent. But when I heard that quote, that the crushing weight of indifference, it made me think, how does my indifference traumatize others?
That's a great way,
because it does.
to start flipping it around.
Yeah, it does.
So, like, what are you indifferent about right now?
Well, I'm trying. One thing I think that our podcast has really helped me is to trust the lived experience.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the ways that I could easily jump to indifference is someone tells me the story and I'm like, yada, 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 yada. Is it really true? Okay. Where are they coming from? And so I'm trying to, my default now is, no matter what, trust their story.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone is worth that trust, but 99% of people
most
really
people
are. And so I think by hearing the story
And I think we're better off trusting a story than untrusting it.
then later
Because
on finding out we were wrong.
I think we're better off in those situations because so many times we question and it hurts victim after victim.
Crushing weight.
Exactly. Versus, I'm okay being duped 1 out of 100 times if it means 99 people were heard and validated and felt listened to.
And if indifference is a crushing weight, then when we don't listen to someone's story and trust their story, we are acting as the space of neutrality, of being indifferent to their pain or indifferent to the challenges that they're having in life. So that's one
Can I add
way.
another one on this?
But I've got a couple here that we can work on with this. Got it.
We can work on
calls to action.
Well, you know what? You derail my sessions, so I'm going to derail your sessions.
Derail it,
thoughts.
baby.
I think the other thing that's interesting, again, I know this is a lot about the other, but we also want to take time for like internal reflection. And I think there's also something about indifference to yourself. And so I know I go through these stages, and I also have friends who really struggle with depression. And sometimes when you're depressed, indifference to yourself becomes a really large part of your life. And again, so I think hearing this, the crushing weight of indifference.
Explain how indifference in depression manifests itself.
Yeah. And so at least I can only speak from my perspective of what is. So, for example, with some of this health stuff, it's been going on for months. It's been very frustrating. And there will literally be times I lose all interest in it because I am just indifferent to the path now. It is so frustrating.
It takes energy to keep fighting.
Energy to keep fighting. And so I become indifferent. And I think there's a time and a place for it. I'm not saying you gotta perk up and be ready every moment of every day. And so there's time for rest and there's time for healing. But what I notice in myself is rest is different than my states of indifference. And when I move to indifference, I know I'm not supporting myself anymore. But I say that lightly because I don't struggle with depression. And so I know my friends or our listeners out there who do struggle with depression, and indifference might be something longer in their life, like something that they deal day to day with. I'm not saying you're a bad person for staying in that difference. I'm saying I have empathy and compassion of how debilitating indifference to yourself can be.
Actually, I'm glad you derailed that because I feel, and I could be wrong, but I feel when we can, this is the state of the individual, right? You're speaking about an individual. When we're in that space and we can feel it and we see it, it's no longer abstract. And then we can say, okay, how am I actually doing this at a larger scale? Because when I heard the crushing weight of indifference, I thought, how many times have I been indifferent to gun violence, right? How many times have I been indifferent to pollution or things like that? Or I just wanted something, so I'm going to do it.
Or even indifference, as we talked about the scrolling on social media, of it starts to become the genocide in Palestine, the immigration of what's happening. You're seeing so much that it builds this intolerance of almost indifference.
And so I think like what you were saying about when we do understand the crushing weight within our own selves, can we then, but can we then bring on other stories? Okay, so one of the things, there's a couple things that I think are tangible calls to action.
Great.
One of it is this language of proximity. And so we know, like, according to these theories, when we separate, when we're in our own bubbles or when we're in our own social systems, we have less empathy, that empathy gap. And so the more that, like you were so sweet the other day when you came home from your youth breakfast, and you just had this huge empathy for this dog, right? That one of the person's doggies that they think.
Little Luna.
So this language.
I wanted to come home with another dog, everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I know myself, I love to go to a wealthy, beautiful town more than any person, any white woman in the world. I love it. I love to go to an expensive restaurant. I love it. And yet there is such a cocoon in that world. And there's such, like, that world has police protection. It has, there's no pollution. It's just such a different world that proximity is important.
You're
Change
hard
your
on yourself.
space.
You're hard on yourself. I would argue, Karen, don't get me wrong, you love a good luxury.
Yeah.
But you are a soul of adventure and new experience.
I know. I've slept on mattresses on the floor.
You are such an extreme source because there was a resort we used to go to, and we now no longer can afford it. It's a long story. But it was, for a while, it was our dream escape. But even then, we could never stay within the confined walls of it. We'd leave every night to go out, to go to Dollar Tacos or go to see a local band play. And the valets of this resort thought we were hilarious because they barely had anyone going in and out with their cars. Everyone just pretty much parked there for the week and didn't leave. And so every night they would ask us about our adventures. And we did this for several years. So don't be as hard on yourself. You have an adventurous spirit.
Thank you.
And you have a bougie set.
But I do think proximity is important because it allows us to actually get to know each other, get to see each other's stories. And hopefully it helps us be less indifferent. If we hold on to the quote, the crushing weight of indifference, that if you could hold on to that simple statement and then think about where in your life you've been indifferent and how that is harming someone, think that through. Okay. This was really interesting. Interrupt abstractions. So in other words, if migration or immigration is so abstract to us. Like transgender. I often think when people are really against transgender, I think, do they even know anyone that's transitioned? No. They don't. Do they even know a family that has gone through transition? Odds are no. And yet, so take it out of abstraction, bring it in to people so that you get to know someone and so that you don't become indifferent to this space. Ask whose weight are you not feeling? I think that that's really important because, like, again, that quote, crushing weight of indifference. Whose story by you being indifferent on a phone call, if you are the front runner, like we all know what it's like when you're making a call and you need help with your insurance, when someone walks alongside you kindly, and we don't know what they're going through. So that's, ask whose weight you're feeling, you are not feeling. I think one of the things is, and I mentioned, think about the comfort zone that we're in a city. Are you afraid to go into that city because you're afraid? It's really interesting reading the book that we've just read, The Hate You Give. There's some scenes in there that you're like, whoa, that would be really hard. And so think about when you're entering in zones of places. Don't stay. The challenge of being in this bubble.
Speaking of The Hate You Give, it's based off of actually a Tupac lyric.
Yeah.
The whole book is. And it's such a great kind of the crushing weight of indifference. But the whole concept of The Hate You Give is the hate that is put out in the world is what is shaping babies every day.
Yeah.
It is what is building these lives for people. It is the hate that
is the crushing weight.
It's the crushing weight of hate and indifference that is given to human life.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then the last one just really is what I said before, is to listen to people's stories and take them as truth and really frame them in a way that like this gentleman was talking about Gaza on this NPR show, and he was talking about so many young people are living in rubble in tents, because of how they've been displaced, or they over and over. How do we visualize that? How do we see it? Anyways, the crushing weight of indifference.
Wow, that was a great one, Karen. That was not indifferent by any bit.
Thank you, Jonelle.
So thank you so much for joining us today on White Women Wake Up. We hope today's conversation sparked something in you, whether it's reflection, a new question, or a deeper commitment to showing up with empathy and accountability. If you found this episode meaningful, please subscribe, share it with someone you love. In fact, share it with 3 people who you love. Leave a review. Anyone, you can connect with us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Substack, or at hello@whitewomenwakeup.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay curious, be open, and keep waking up.
Bye. But before we go, a quick playback on today's sources. The phrase indifference reduces the other to an abstraction comes from Eli Wiesel's 1999 White House address, The Perils of Indifference. The research on construal level theory is from Trope and Lieberman, published in Psychological Review in 2010. The empathy gap comes from the work of behavioral economist George Lowenstein at Carnegie Mellon, and social baseline theory is from Lane, Luminet, Nave, and Orahak, published in 2015. All 3 are linked in the show notes. Thanks for carrying the weight with us today. Keep waking up.